Right. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for being here today for this next installment of the RARI seminar series. Very lucky to have Dr. Joshua Kumbani joining us today. Josh is an expert on musical instruments and the archaeological record. He did his PhD here at WITS. He also did a postdoc here and is now affiliated with the University of Johannesburg. Okay, Josh, over to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, David. And hello, everyone. And thank you for coming to the lunch hour seminar series. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic, drumming things up, a possible depiction of a drum at Court Lay 158 or Got 1, South Africa. I will first introduce or give a background to what is drumming. Drumming is a percussion activity in which one hits a stretched membrane covering a hollow resonator to produce a rhythmic effect. It can be done using hands, sticks, or mallets. Drums are Africa's most popular and widely used musical instruments. Drums are also used for entertainment, communication purposes, and other socio-religious practices. It has been demonstrated that persistent rhythmic drumming can send people into an altered state of consciousness or trance. In African societies, the drum plays the orchestral part that accompanies ritualistic dances and songs. And drums are also understood to have supernatural potence that can summon the gods to commune with people. And in the past, they used to be frowned upon by early missionaries who were regarding drums as something that they associated with heathenism. And the same was also happening with the mbira instrument. So the early missionaries were confiscating drums and mbira from the African communities, and then they would destroy them because they regarded them as things that were associated with heathenism. In certain African communities, some drums are sacred and are perceived as a symbol of royalty, while others are only played during rituals. I'm going to talk about some of the examples of early use of drums that have been recorded in South Africa. Both the Khoi and the Sen made drums that were made from clay pots, and they would cover them with animal skins, and then they would tie them with a leather thong. According to Thunberg, the Khoi drum called a sukoa produced a dull, heavy sound that had nothing pleasing it to his ear. So Thunberg, as he was traveling into the interior of the Eastern Cape of South Africa, he came across the Khoi who were playing a drum that was made of a clay pot, and then they put an animal skin on top. So in his writing, he says that this drum produced a dull, heavy sound which had nothing pleasing from the sound. And he goes on to say that, however, the people who were present at the music procession, they were dancing with amusement and with a lot of energy. And then he goes on to say that some of the people, they ended up going into what he calls a wild perspiration. So in my mind, I just thought that perhaps it could have been people who were going into trance. And I also went on to think that from what Thunberg said, most of the Europeans who were coming into Southern Africa, some of them, they had their own perspectives about the African communities. And the other thing, it might have been remarks that were made from a racial perspective. And when you go to music theory, it can also be the fact that what we call music is something which is debatable, especially among the people who study music, the ethnomusicologists. So what I can call music myself, it may not be music to the next person. I think this could have been the situation with Thunberg, that what they understood as music from a European perspective, it was a different scenario altogether when we come to Southern Africa or among African communities. Among the Sen, the drum was played by females while men danced. The dancers also wore leg rattles that were made of springbok ears. Women would sit, clap, and sing while the men were dancing. You realize that the custom of using a clay pot as a drum resonator was also practiced by the Sotho, who made their moropas of clay. So here there is something interesting. I think you will all agree with me that potsherds are some of the most artifacts that are recovered from archaeological digs from the later Stone Age context as well as the farming communities. But most archaeologists, when we see potsherds, we normally interpret them as pieces that came from storage vessels or vessels that were used for cooking purposes. And then it struck my mind when there are records which say that people in the past used pots as drum resonators. I have never come across any interpretation which alludes to the fact that it is possible that some of the pieces that we find in the archaeological record of the potsherds might have been used as drum resonators. Of course, I understand that pots have got various functions, and this is one of the funny function which pots were used for in the past, but which never crosses our minds most of the times when we interpret the potsherds that we find in the archaeological record. Southern African hunter-gatherers used the shell of a tortoise and they would tie an animal skin with sinew around the opening to make a drum. Stowe recorded that in the past, people would get the tortoise shell, those big tortoise shells, and then they would cover them with an animal skin and then tie that with a leather thong, and then they would make drums. There's also what is called the drum dance, which has been recorded amongst Johansi hunter-gatherers in Botswana. According to Lee, the drum dance was performed by women who would form a circle, they would clap, sing, and dance. Men would play a long drum to accompany the dancing women. And in the process, women healers would go into a trance, and in some cases, they would use hallucinogens from plants, and then they would consume them, and then district in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. As you can see on the map, there's a Fruit Valley farm. That's where this site is located in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. I'm going to talk briefly about the methods that I used in this research. As you realize that this site is not a new site. It's a site which was recorded way back, I think around the 60s or the 70s by Lee and Woodhouse. So in this research, I consulted mostly published material, ethnographic and historical sources to find out more about the context in which drums are used. For example, Kibi has got his 1934 book, which summarizes most of the musical instruments that were used in South Africa. And he also has a section where he describes various types of drums that are used by different cultural groups in South Africa. I also relied on the Sarada repository, which also has a rich collection of historical documents, photographs, redrawings, tracings, and slides of rock art materials. So as I was sifting through the Sarada database, my aim was to try and look for any references of drum players that are found in South Africa. But it happened that it seems as if the drum depictions or drum player depictions are very rare. And hence, in the Sarada repository, you only uh, be directed to this site, which is Hood Village, which happens to have a person who is thought to be playing a drum. And as we all know, rock art is mainly affected by natural processes, and the paintings themselves, they they fade away with time. So in order for me to analyze the panel which I was focusing on, I also used Adobe Illustrator and Distress to enhance some of the pictures such that at least I could be able to interpret some of the motifs that are present on the panel. I also used a comparative approach where I compared the site Groot Villei with other known sites from various parts of the world where drum depictions are found. For example, drum depictions are found in the Siberian region, which is part of Asia. And in that side, the drum depictions, some of which are decorated, and most of the drums that are found there, they are circular drums, some they are cylindrical drums, but however, not all of the drums are decorated. And then in Norway, there are also engraved drums from the Alta region in Norway. And then in India, we also have some drum depictions that are found in, I think it's Madhya Pradesh region, where there are various sites that have got drum depictions. And some of the drums that are found there, they are conjoined drums, which are joined together using a stick. So you will be having two separate drums that are conjoined with wood. And there's one site which is very interesting where such kind of a depiction is associated with warriors that are wearing headgear. And one of the common denominator that you realize that is associated with all the drum depictions that are depicted in other parts of the world is that these depictions have been said to be associated with shamans and or shamanism and ritual activities. So this slide is showing the picture from the Lee and Woodhouse book in 1970, and it has got a caption which says "A man beating a drum." And as you can see on that image, you will see that there is a human figure with outstretched hands, and the hands, they look like they are bulging at the end or they are clenched. And then there is that motif which is flat at the top as well as slightly flat at the base and is conical. That the motif which I think it's a drum. So this is the extended panel of the site before it was enhanced using Adobe Illustrator or Distress. And as you can see that the picture is a bit faint. If you look on the left side, you will see that there are two human figures which are slightly bending forward. And if you look very closely, yes, not that clear. Those people, they seem like they are holding bows. And then you will see that on the right side, there's another motif which looks like it's a vessel, and it looks like it's similar to the other motif that I'm referring to as a drum. But if you look at that other motif, you will see that it has got extended edges, and then it looks like it's filled with something. So in my mind, I thought it could be a storage vessel. And if you look closely, you will see that it's superimposing an animal. And when I move on with my slides, you will see that that animal is brownish like in color. So this is an enhanced panel from top delay. If you look top left, you will see that's where the image of a possible drama is, and then the other associated motifs below there. We've got those two human figures which look like they are holding balls. So here I was attempting to redraw the panel using Adobe Illustrator, and as you can see that it was done by somebody who was still learning. So I'm going to give a brief discussion of the drums, as well as focusing on the possible drama depiction from root delay. Drums are the most common membranophones that are used in Africa. But however, you will realize that there are no remnants of a drum that have been recovered from an archaeological excavation in Southern Africa, as far as I know. But it's possible that maybe somewhere they might have found that. Maybe we're yet to hear it. The GOT one drum player can be regarded as a rare occurrence because, like I said, as I was sifting through the Sarada repository, that's the only image which comes up when you use the search drum or drum playing, which means that in Southern Africa, we hardly have drums depictions or drum players in the rock art of South Africa or Southern Africa. So it might be that drums were not used by the later Stone Age hunter-gatherers prior to the contact with the Khoi or the Bantu speaking groups, although they may have used the rock gongs, because we're not quite sure when did people start to use rock gongs. So perhaps the reason why we only have one site which has got a possible drama might be that the later Stone Age people were not using drums before they got into contact with other groups like the Khoi and the Bantu. It's just a, it's just um, a presumption. The depiction of got one side could be a drummer playing the drum to provide a rhythm during a musical or a ritual performance. Uh, as you saw, the player bends forward, allowing him to beat the drum, and the elongated, bulging hands suggest the use of clubs, sticks, or mallets. So the distance in which the clubs or the hands would have traveled from behind the head to the drum skin uh, could have allowed this person to play the drum with power. This method perhaps allow one to play the drum loudly and slowly, unlike when one is seated and can beat the drum faster. The tempo of playing the drum in that way, in a slow and loud, might have been a way maybe to relay a certain messages, um, because drums are understood to perform various roles. It can be used for entertainment purposes. It can be used to send a particular message or it can be used during rituals. So if one is playing a drum using sticks or mallets and the hands are outstretched, and then when you beat the drum, it means that the rhythm that is going to be produced is more likely to be louder, and then it will travel a long distance, which in most cases might be to send a certain messages. Like in Zimbabwe, among the Karanga people, when I was doing my research way back about Tampiano, Ombira, I was told that back then the people would play a drum. So a certain rhythm has got a certain meaning. When they wanted to alert the villagers to say that you are in danger, there are some encroachers who are coming maybe to attack us or to raid. Somebody would just play a drum, and they would understand that if somebody, for example, beats the drum twice, it means that we are in danger. Or if somebody plays the drum once, maybe it's a signal, or they are calling people to gather or to come to a meeting place. So in African communities, it is something that is known that drums are can be used to send messages. So the big black animal motif, which is associated with possible drama, could be probably a mystical animal. If it is associated with the drumming figure, perhaps it might be a rain animal, and then the possible drama could be a rain shaman. Similar interpretations have been used when scholars were trying to interpret the musical ball players that are found in the rock art of South Africa, for example, in the Maclear district. So you will find out that the musical ball players have been interpreted as shamans, as rain shamans, and they are more mainly associated with the rain animals. But however, it is not clear if the other two individuals that are below the possible drama are associated with the drama. But it is also possible that they could have been associated with the drama. And if they are associated with the drama, it is interesting to note that those figures were like bending forward. And this posture is normally associated with people that are going into trance. Perhaps that person was playing the drum during a ritual ceremony, and those figures were now going through the transformation process of them going into an altered state of consciousness, or they were going into trance. In conclusion, depictions of drums are not a common occurrence in the rock art of South Africa or Southern Africa, and hence the got one drum depiction can be regarded or considered as a rare image. The possible drummer could be playing the drum during a trance dance as indicated by his bending posture and that of the other two individuals below him. The playing of a drum produces a rhythm, which is one of the important drivers of entertainment and for taking people into an altered state of consciousness. Um, Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Josh. I think you've hit on something that is kind of an unasked question, because it makes so much sense how drums would fit into all these different contexts, ritual contexts, entertainment context, all of them highly social contexts, and we don't seem to find them in the paintings. And I would assume that because of the importance of music, because of these important performances, because of the importance of the meaning of the materials that these different objects are made of, we should have more. And you're pointing out that we don't. So I think that's really interesting to think about. Do we have any questions in the room or online for Josh?
Yeah, my question was, do you think that you might have depictions of drums that would be seen, for instance, from the top rather than from the side, like depictions that would be difficult to recognize as drums? like round shapes, or I don't know. Like, have you investigated this aspect or?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's very probable that we might have some drum depictions that might have been missed because you know what happens sometimes when you are doing field work, you've got something in mind. So if you are not expecting to see such kind of things, you might miss them. The same way which happens when people are dealing with the physical archaeological artifacts. I was surprised when I was doing my PhD that you'll find out that there are some sound or music related artifacts that are there in the storage areas. But because people are not looking for these musical instruments, it means their minds are not looking forward to see such artifacts. So the same might also happen that they might be there, but it's only that they might have been missed, which means to say that there's still more work to be done, if I may say so. You might find out that it's not the only one which has got a possible drum depiction. And also, we've got a number of Southern African countries, I think, in some areas where not much research has not been done. Like, for example, in Zimbabwe, I've been going through some of the rock art sites in Zimbabwe, and I was surprised that they actually happen to be musical instruments depictions in Zimbabwe, but we don't know about them. So, which means that it's only that little has been done in that area. So, I would assume that if we pay particular attention to the rock art depictions, we might find more. But from what I gathered from Sarada, it happened that is the only one. But which does not mean that that's the only one in Southern Africa. Perhaps there might be more sites which are yet to be discovered. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Rosa, yeah, you are right. I concur with you because you will find out that there are conical drums, some they are cylindrical, and they are also what are called tambourine drums, which I think I had one picture in one of my slides where somebody was beating something which looks like a half drum. So that's a tambourine drum. So, like what Iris was saying, you might find out that there are tambourine drums in the rock art, but because we are looking for something that we are commonly used to, like the cylindrical and the conical drums, and then we miss that because there are various types of drums that are used. So it's a valid point that there might be a lot of drum depictions, but because we have got various shapes, we might miss them in the rock art. I didn't see it that way, that that motif with extended edges could have been an apron. I think when I was presenting, I said perhaps it could have been a storage vessel. That's what I thought of. So for it to be probably an apron is something that is possible. And if you say that the aprons were associated with, you said with initiation,
Yes, yeah.
that might perhaps add another dimension to the interpretation to say that perhaps the drum was being played in an initiation context if aprons are known to be associated with initiation ceremonies. But it's something that I'd never thought of in that angle.
Well, it just remains for me to thank Josh very much for a thought-provoking presentation. Thank you to all of you for joining us here and online. And we look forward to seeing you at the next talk, which will be at the end of next month.